People who've been in a coma, what did it feel like? Story 1. Felt like no time passed at all. One second I was out, next second I was waking up. No dreams, no awareness, just nothingness. Answer: same. I only realized I had been out when I started to come to. I have memories of the day before, and then waking up 5 days later. Nothing between. Edit. Since this is getting some views, shout out to the docs and nurses who staff the ICU and handle folks like us. We just sleep on beds while the living freefall through every emotion possible against the backdrop of the happy professionals who check the fluids, clean the beds, talk to family while still managing their own lives. I didn't spend enough time awake to get to know my caregivers, but when I was aware, it was clear that the staff and my wife and my mother were close. That day was a pivotal moment in my life, a literal emotional anchor, and for the healthcare providers who treated me, it was just part of the job. Wild. Story 2. Spent several days in a medically induced coma after brain surgery years ago. I remember coming about a quarter of the way, conscious a few times when I would be poked or prodded during exams. I would hear the conversations, but could not feel any real sensation, as if my entire body had gone to sleep. I had no ability to move my body or to speak. I sometimes wonder if that was a false memory. I had some really weird and very vivid dreams for a couple of weeks afterward, and had difficulty maintaining short-term memories for at least a month. Story 3. Thank you for posting this. Not only have the responses been interesting to read, but they've been helpful for me. My sister died during a coma following a tragic end attempt, and I've always wondered what slipping into that must have felt like for her. I hope she is at peace. Answer: if it helps, I had a hospital test go very, very wrong and my blood sugar dropped to under 1 point. I remember it being the most euphoric thing ever. Since then, I've been told that passing is meant to be one of the nicest things we go through due to how the brain dies. Not sure if this helps. In short, it was a really beautiful thing to me. It felt amazing as I started to drift away. Story 4. For me, it was a deep, dreamless sleep, not aware of anything external. Woke up a week later and didn't know who I was or who my family was. Answer: that reminds me of having a grand mal seizure. I woke up fighting the paramedics. They calmed me down and asked me my name. I remembered my first name and they said, "That's good. Do you remember your last name?" I thought really hard and said, "No." They asked if I had any family, brothers or sisters, and I said, "I don't know." It all started coming back over the next few hours, but not knowing anything about myself was concerning. It was hilarious to me 20 minutes later when a nurse asked me about my insurance info. I laughed and said, "Lady, I just remembered my last name." I don't know if she was informed of my amnesia. Then the next nurse asked if I could walk across the room and kind of seemed confused about how wobbly I was. When I saw my discharge papers and noticed the amount of Valium they had given me, it seemed insane that they would expect me not to be wobbly. Story 5. This is off subject, but I had a friend that was in a coma for a week, and it was right before 911. He woke up a week after 911. I cannot imagine how strange that must have been. Answer: also off subject, but I had a weird co-worker contractor who went off the grid into the deep woods, or some shoot for like 3 months just before 911 happened. Pretty much zero contact with the outside world. When he came back, he was shocked and upset by what happened. He sent this excessively long all-company email. It was like 30 people in the office, we all knew him, talking about his fears and anger and sadness and shock, etc. It was what we'd all been dealing with in our own way, but delayed by months. It was unsettling, like we'd all been dropped back in time, but with the knowledge of the future. As far as I know, that dude eventually dropped out of society completely. He pretty much lives in the woods or wherever, full time now. Homeless by choice, I guess. I know he drops back into town every once in a while because I've seen him walking around. I don't know how he survives. Story 6. My husband was in a medically induced coma last summer. He remembered being in the house. Then it was dark, and all of a sudden he was laying in a hospital bed. It had been almost 5 days. Answer. A work colleague who had a very bad motorcycle crash remembered racing his bike and telling himself, "Let me slow down, otherwise I will get into trouble." He blinked and found bars in front of him. He told himself that prison came very quickly, but he could not remember a trial. He had woken up in hospital. The nurses raised the rails on the side of his bed as he was getting restless. Sadly, he needed a cane to walk thereafter. Story 7. Was in a COVID ventilator coma. I don't remember going under, but I remember frantically calling my fiancée to say goodbye for what I thought was the last time. I don't remember dreaming or hearing anything for 2 weeks. When I came out, I was very confused and don't remember much for a day or two. I lost the ability to walk for a week and had no hand-eye coordination and could barely operate my phone. I got stage 4 pressure ulcers, bed sores that took 4 years to heal from. Apparently, I would wake up and try to remove my breathing tube occasionally. Answer. I was in a coma for a week. All of my memories from before and a few weeks, months after were definitely affected, although not lost. I also think differently now and lost my inner narrator. I didn't wake up during it, just once it was done. But I was very confused when I woke up as well, and I panicked and tried to remove my breathing tube too. I do remember that, and it was horrible. Like suffocating and gagging at the same time, you try to breathe but can't. Story 8. I don't remember much about it. I was on so much painkillers, I doubt I felt anything. I woke up 4 days later. There's a lot to the story, but that's basically answers the question. Story 9. I was out for about 8 weeks after getting ran over by a truck. Absolute zero memory of the accident, or the 8 weeks I was unconscious. I woke up barely able to move my arms and legs from muscle atrophy. I was in and out of consciousness for the next couple months after that. Some of the lucid dreams were horrifying. I didn't want to fall asleep some days, because some of the dreams seemed to go for days. I was told I did a lot of talking in my sleep. Story 10. My husband was out for nearly a month. He has no memory of it. Once he woke up, he was still on a ventilator for another week. During that time, he had vivid dreams about being kidnapped and struggling to get free. He went for emergency surgery for a small bowel obstruction, and complications snowballed into respiratory failure sepsis. Story 11. I was in a coma for 2 weeks because of asthma earlier this summer. It was horrible. I was on ketamine and fentanyl. I would periodically understand what was going on, like, oh, I'm laying down and unable to move or blink. What the hell happened? Then the delusions started. I had the strongest, most realistic delusions trying to figure out what I was hearing on the outside. I thought I was in a horrible car accident and was thrown through my car windshield. I thought my mom died in the accident. I thought I texted my family and friends. None of it was real. There's obviously a ton more I'm not revealing. But yeah, do not recommend. Answer. In 1996, my mom was in a horrible car accident where she was ejected through the front windshield. She had a TBI and was in a coma for 2 weeks. I was 2, and I remember unclipping my seatbelt and falling onto the broken glass. The car was on its side, and when I looked through the front where the windshield was, I saw her lying on the ground unconscious, with blood streaming down her face in a similar pattern to a spider web. It's my first core memory. She was about 17, and when she left the hospital, she didn't know me or my sister. We don't have a relationship with her today. Story 12. This is long sorry. My Gramps slipped into a coma, and doctor were unable to find any indicators that he was not a vegetable. After 3-4 hours, the doctors let us know. Gramps had said he didn't want to be kept on a machine, so we all prepared to say goodbye that night. I was the last one to go in. I held his hand and I spoke to him. Something inside of me remembered that I read somewhere that in a coma the last thing to go was hearing. I told him to come back to me, begged him to come back to me, to come home. He came out of his coma 30 minutes after. A couple of months later, I asked him how the coma was. Gramps said it was peaceful and there was a light he was gravitating towards, but he heard me say, "Come back to me, please." He heard me beg and decided to follow my voice, and there he was, awake. Unfortunately, the second time around, 4-ish years later during COVID, he didn't make it. But I'm comforted to know he heard me tell him it was okay to let go, that I loved him and I wasn't mad. Rest in peace, you were greatest man alive to me. Story 13. Not much. Felt like you do when awakening from a long deep sleep when they brought me around. Induced coma. Story 14. Had a subdural hematoma midline shift, hit the ground pretty hard. Happened Saturday and woke up Wednesday from the coma, and was trying to ask the doctors and my family questions about what happened to me but couldn't talk. Aphasia was just trapped in my head. Drove me crazy where I would be super aggro to everyone and the poor nurses. Sorry, nurses and people in healthcare. But the coma was blackness. Just nothing at all. Story 15. I don't know if I was in a coma. I cut my knee and 3 days later I was hospitalized for 6 weeks. When I showed at the ER, my liver and kidneys were showing signs of shutting down. I had a septic reaction. I was almost dead and don't remember the first month aside from a feeling of dread and extreme exhaustion. My leg was solid even while trying to walk to the bathroom. I felt random glimpses of darkness and random sounds until I stabilized, then mostly slept for the first 4 weeks as the IV antibiotics stabilized me. Story 16. My father-in-law was in an accident when he was 18, 4-month coma. He doesn't remember a thing. Last thing he remembered was getting into the car. Next thing it's 4 months later and he's in the hospital. It's such an interesting thing, a coma. Your body just decides that you are too damaged to be conscious, if it's not medically induced. Divert all power to maintenance and recovery, lol. Story 17. I was aware of my surroundings, but I couldn't interact. I'd fade in and out, from present to another world. I was at peace and I felt no physical or emotional pain. At times I could hear people talking to me. Story 18. This whole thread scares the shoot out of and to everyone who's sharing stories, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I love you and am glad you are all here. Story 19. I was going under for brain surgery. The anesthetist asked if I'd like a song playing. Party rock anthem was playing at the time. I said I didn't care. I was told they count backwards from 5. At 3, I was gone. The next thing I remember, a nurse was cleaning the blood off my face in recovery. It ruined Party Rock Anthem for me. Not that I ever liked that song in the first place. Answer. Totally not about being in coma, but I have a song ruined for life, too, by a doctor. It was at my very first OBGYN appointment. I was around 17 and went by myself. The doctor had a med student going through the practice with her. I did not know I could say no to the student participating in the exam when the doctor asked, I was freaking out so much, and the student was too. So there I am on the chair, butt naked, and the doctor stands on one side and the student is peeping over her shoulder. The doctor was examining me and talking mainly to the student, explaining what she is doing and how to do this and that, etc. And at one point she goes, "Here, try for yourself," offering my coochie to the student. I instantly go even more stiff. Me and the student lock eyes. I see fear in her eyes, and I am sure she sees fear in mine. The doctor, totally oblivious to the immense pressure in the room, says to me, "Oh, honey, you are so tense. Try to relax, divert your thoughts, listen on the radio." And there it was, my country's Eurovision song. It is not in English, but the name translated would be Song About Happiness. Unfortunately, this song is still quite known and still plays on the radio once in a while, but whenever I hear it, I get very weird flashbacks. That is one PTSD I never thought I would have. I definitely thought it would fade over time, but yet here I am 18 years later, and it is still imprinted on my brain. Story 20. I had an extreme case of toxin poisoning. It sounds bad, it was terrible, and I had so much abdominal pee puked out so much that I was finally puking out bile from my liver. I was given high doses of injections to stop, but to the surprise of everyone, I still vomited then. To stop pain, I was given painkillers after painkillers before I finally went into induced coma to ensure they got time to think. My body got a break. The coma was uneventful. When I woke up 6 days later, I was shocked that 6 days had passed since I last remembered. I was amazed that work stuff was done by someone else. Someone stayed by my bedside while I was unconscious, and I missed watching a soccer game I was waiting to watch for over a month. Besides the shock of 6 days passing by, weird throbbing headache, feeling hungry but not wanting to eat anything, nothing else. Story 21. Had a stroke in the brain at age 17. It was a very long and vivid dream. I dreamt that I was in a park with a pond in the middle, and there were lots of kids playing around there. A black bear shows up and closes in on the children, and the next scene I can see a thick branch lodged into my arm, and then I wake up. Story 22. It's nothingness. Then waking to everything. Even now, though, I can't tell the difference in the immediacy of waking up, and several days later, what are my memories, and what are just my memories of people telling me what was going on? Does that make sense? Story 23. I was in a coma for about a month after getting MASSA pneumonia. I'd say I have at least a month of coma memories, especially because they were all connected. It felt like I was living day after day. There was no jumping around, just one event after another. They're easily the clearest and most complete memories I have. They seem to be influenced by things people said around me. I didn't hear those things as voices or anything direct, but they did seem to inspire events. Story 24. No memory whatsoever. Woke up in a hospital bed after a car accident that could have eliminated me. CAT scan showed no damage, miraculously. The hardest part was getting a catheter put in because it wasn't safe for me to walk yet. And the recovery. I slept for 14, 16 hours a day for an entire summer because of it. Brains are delicate. Having one that works is such a gift. Story 25. I shot myself in the head once and went completely out for 4 days. It took me years to even remember that day. Zero memory. I'm still not convinced I'm in the same life. Answer. I kind of understand this. At 16, I had a car accident that required surgery, and I was in a coma just 3 days. It felt like when you sleep, but no good memories of dreams, just being awake. I remember counting back and then awake. But afterwards, for years, I had a thought that I may have died that day, and this life I'm in is the dream, and it felt so surreal. I didn't have that thought often because life has an impressive way of pulling us into reality with work, trying to pay bills, take care of routine things, etc. But once in a rare moment, I would wonder. It's not that I feel I'm in a different life, but that I'm dreaming this is reality when it's not. But I can seem to access what reality is. I'm 50 now and have a husband and daughter, and just want to stay here in this reality with them. But in taking Mary Jane or shrooms in my older age, that has gotten me closer to what may be the reality I wonder about than anything. Having the accident changed me, though. Physically, I had to deal with an ugly scar, not having anyone I could talk to about that, and being a teen, I should have had a therapist. The lack of confidence and my expectation that I should have confidence led me to create false walls, false confidence, and push away real friendships for a long time. This didn't help with thinking I should have died that day, that I had almost no friends and lived a work-filled life of no value. Even family relationships felt shallow and hollow. Maybe they always were. I was only 16 when it happened. Having my family now has pulled me out of the hollowness of life and stopped those thoughts that I shouldn't be here, or even that I don't want to be. Life is good now, and I've figured out how to make my own way gradually over the years. I'm the magician of this life, and I make the path. If in the end it turns out to be just a dream or illusion, well, then I would rather be part of a good dream illusion. Much like how a magician is responsible for creating the best illusion possible for all of us. 93. Story 26. I can distinctly remember being in a completely black space, but there was a black guy in a tux on a cello and a white lady in a white dress with a violin playing Pachelbel's Canon in D, basically on a loop while I just kind of hovered there. Didn't seem like it was for very long, but I was out 4 or 5 days. But that's the only memory I have from it. Story 27. I could feel myself fighting with everything I had to wake up. But of course, there are many different severity levels to traumatic injuries. Story 28. I was on ECMO and I thought I had died. I felt like my whole life was gone and now I'm dead. I also remember thinking my husband had hooked me up to some AI thing. When I woke up to ask him, he had no idea what I was talking about. Story 29. Like a deep sleep. Woke up like 8 days in and was really confused. Family was really worried I wasn't going to come back. Died for a bit in the initial LOL. Story 30. I have the same vivid auditory memory of hearing my mom talking while I was in a coma whenever I tell a story about my experience. My memory has selected that moment for long-term memory storage. I could hear the nurses talking and my mom talking, but not consciously. It was like the parents in Charlie Brown. Story 31. Not me, but my mom had a brain aneurysm and was very lucky to survive it. She was in a coma for a week. When she woke up, she thought she'd been in a pub playing pool with 2 good friends of hers that died a year before. Funnily enough, not my brother, who died 2 years before. I like to think they were keeping her company and entertained while she was in the in-between. Story 32. Deep sleep. A few vivid fever dreams, but mostly nothingness, blackness. I remember making the choice of which door to walk through, life or passing, before the blackness, though. Story 33. Like taking 100 hits of acid, having a bad trip, and not knowing you took acid. I was comatose for 4 to 6 weeks. It's hard to say exactly how long. I was never a 3 on the coma scale. Anything below an 8 is considered comatose. And I had some vivid hallucinations. trippy nightmare world of medical experiments and straight-up body horror. Story 34. I was in a ketamine-induced coma for 3 weeks. It was an existential nightmare. I saw demons, died in my head, and was reincarnated through a series of tests where I was guided by a guardian angel. I hallucinated about an ocean of demons for 2 weeks after I woke up. I had so many dreams. I destroyed my hospital room, attacked nurses, and would rip my intubation tube out, even bit through it once. I ripped my IVs and ECG tabs off trying to escape. Destroyed every breathing mask in the hospital that fit me. I remember hanging halfway off the hospital bed after ripping everything off and hearing the machine flatline after ripping everything off. I was upside down watching the ICU staff try to get dressed on time to come in and save me while I was gasping for air. It was during COVID, so they had to don all their safety gear. Story 35. My father was in an induced coma for 2 weeks, and when he came back, he was severely confused for a week or two because his dreams felt like real-life scenarios. First was he went back into the early 1900s with horse carriages and a snowy Adelaide. It's never snowed here. Second was he had a dream that he got caught selling substances. There was a lot of police involved and my niece was on the scene, so when he came back, he was very apologetic to her. Not sure if this induced this dream, but there was an assault takedown that happened, and some of the victims were in the same ED, so my thought is he could hear the commotion from the police and the nurses may have gossiping around my father since he was out. Story 36. I didn't know I was in a coma till I woke up. I heard everything going on around me. I just couldn't speak. It's almost like a bad dream you're trying to wake up from. So I tell everyone, talk to your loved ones, but don't discuss major medical or any decisions you're planning, 'cause we hear you. Story 37. Nothing, went to sleep and woke up a few weeks later. I thought it was the same day, but later on, in the same day, went into the hospital on a Monday 2 a.m., woke up on a Thursday at 4 p.m. weeks later. Story 38. I was in a medically induced coma for a week or so. Most of my memories of it are fuzzy, but I know that I dreamt another life long enough to be confused on who I was once I awoke. I recognized everyone I knew in real life, but it was like having another set of memories forced upon me. Took me another week or so to settle into myself. Story 39. Medically induced coma from intense seizures. Remember, like 2 seconds from the ambulance ride to the hospital.